A greeting, Gamecock fans. Hope you're having a fantastic Saturday. I know there's some news coming out of Columbia that is fantastic for the Gamecocks. Wanted to pop in right here on Chief Sports South Carolina, tell you guys all about it. The Gamecocks get a double commitment from a pair of twins out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Four-star defensive tackle Aiden Harris from Weddington High School in Matthews. Been telling you about him. We talk a lot about Taka Hemingway and sort of the uniqueness he brought to the table from the defensive tackle position, and that's Aiden Harris, essentially quick twitch guy on the inside. Played three technique all of his junior season up there at Weddington. Broad shouldered, athletic, ball of hate, aggressive, really good prospect, honestly. Aiden Harris is outstanding. The number 11 defensive line, which is defensive tackle prospect nationally per 24/7 Sports Composite. The number 6 overall prospect in the state of North Carolina. Very quick twitch. He has 23 and a half career sacks in his high school career with his senior year to go. 13 and a half sacks last year, 31 tackles for loss. 82 total tackles, 6'3" and a half, around 265, and solid muscle. And he can move. Had offers from everybody in the country. Ohio State, Auburn, NC State was a factor with him. They tend to do a pretty good job in their own state, and it kind of came down to those two schools. There were several times during the process where Ohio State was thought to be the team to beat. Auburn was heavily in the mix. Tennessee, a really big pickup at this position for Travian Robertson, who was his lead recruiter. And as we all know, South Carolina needs defensive tackles this cycle. It's a known fact. High school guys, and sort of some guys that were supposed to visit that first official visit weekend last weekend did not. They ended up not doing it. And it was like, well, Aiden Harris and Noah Clark, they're two highly ranked players. Aiden, I think, is number 52 overall nationally per composite. Clark, I think, is 126. He's also visiting. And I can report to you that Noah Clark's visit is going extremely well based on a couple of contacts I talked to earlier today. But this isn't about, we'll talk about Noah Clark after his visit's over, but I did want to throw that in there. So it kind of came out of those two guys, both from D-line heaven, both from the state of North Carolina. That is a state where South Carolina has struggled quite a bit in recent years to kind of make inroads. There's been a lot going on up there. A lot of the players, typically when North Carolina's not up, and Mac Brown did a really good job keeping the players in state. They tend to gravitate way out of state towards brands and things like that. And of course, we saw that with Rodney Dunham, the 5-star DN, also from Charlotte, ended up visiting Notre Dame and going to Notre Dame, despite visiting South Carolina 9 times and then visiting South Bend once. He elected to go to Notre Dame, but that's kind of what happens with these, has been happening with these North Carolina kids. I think South Carolina made some serious inroads last season by getting a Brian Rowe out of that area. I think Brian will play some this year. We'll break all that down, obviously, all summer. Donovan Darden was a big-time recruit out of Havelock in the eastern part of the state. Trayshawn Austin is at South Carolina, and he was a heavily recruited guy from a lot of ACC schools like NC State. The Gamecocks got him. He's a freshman linebacker. So the numbers for North Carolina actually were pretty good this past cycle, better than they had been. And then this cycle, with a bunch of players at positions you need players at, defensive tackle mainly, it is D-line heaven. Then, hey, it's no time like the present for the Gamecocks to reestablish inroads there. And Aiden Harris certainly is a fantastic prospect. You just can't say enough good about what he brings to the table, his uniqueness. He fits, when we were talking to Darren Usher on Inside the Gamecocks, the show, gosh, I must have been about 3 months ago or so, we were discussing what they look for defensive tackle because there was a portal need. And of course they got Troy Pikes, and he mentioned versatility, guys that can shift and move and ultimately play a three technique or something, but then if they shift into something else, they can play that. Guys like TJ Sanders, basically, and Tonka Hemingway. A lot of snaps Tonka Hemingway played last year. A lot of big plays through his career at South Carolina. And Aiden Harris is a lot like him. A lot like him. I think it's good. He's an inside guy. I think in certain 3-4 alignments, he could be an end, just like Tonka. Like in the NFL, Tonka, the Raiders run a three-man front. I could see him as a big end in that kind of alignment. But Carolina with what they need in this class and position-wise, this is a really big one. Travian Robertson again. Hats off to him. This is a four-star out-of-state defensive tackle in a place Carolina needs to start recruiting really well in his home state that had offers from everybody in the country. I like what a lot of people, other people do too. Andrew Harris as well. He's a little bit different, a little more like probably like Trayshawn Austin last year. Is kind of that similar type prospect. South Carolina's recruiting him as an outside linebacker / edge. He's 6'2", 235, 240 right now. Maybe 6'2" and a half. Big, strong kid that has a lot of tenacity. Quick twitch athlete. He had offers from everywhere else under the sun. Not a throw-in guy with his brother, by the way. He's a 24/7 Sports Composite has him as the number. As a four-star prospect, safely inside the top 330, 329 overall. I think around top 500, 400 or four-star. 400 4-stars or better is what I think that number is these days. Maybe like 350. But 329 overall. He had last year 81 tackles, 25 tackles for loss, 7 sacks for Weddington. I've watched his film. Get off is really good off the edge. And boy, he's physical. He's a physical player. Really, yeah, a lot like Austin, Trayshawn Austin. I guess that just kind of hit me. The 3-star guy out of North Carolina that they took in the last class that's playing linebacker now. I think he's an edge. Now, talking to Alex Jones on the Smorgasbord this week, we got into Andrew Harris a little bit, or maybe it was last week, but we talked about him maybe being the Jerron Willis type of player, kind of like similar to Bam Martin Scott and Jerron Willis. That's what Andrew Harris is. He's physically mature. So he's a guy at the very least, Andrew, that can come in as a true freshman in 2026 and help on special teams. Guys like that, he's got real long arms, can block punts, kicks, cover kicks. He's fast enough. I mean, a lot of good about Andrew as well. I mentioned Aiden first, primarily because the position he's at, D tackle. That's a huge need, right? But Andrew's a really good player too. He's not ranked as high, and South Carolina through the years has had pretty good luck with brothers. You still have Jelon Kilgore and Gerard Kilgore still there. The Porter twins took the show to App State with Dowell Loggins, where I think Rondarius Porter could maybe be a high-level Sun Belt D tackle and get drafted next year. Can't hate on him for that. Carolina certainly will miss him in the rotation, but he'll get more snaps at App, and I think that was a good move. Everybody loved those kids around. So having brothers on is probably more I'm not mentioning. I don't have them all written down in front of me and just kind of spur of the moment doing this because it's breaking news. But certainly Carolina's had success with that, and that feeds into the culture that Beamer's got and all that good stuff. This really, with the Harris brothers, started heating up in March or April. This was not a situation where the Gamecocks led for them the entire time, and it was just kind of one of those layups. Is it a Gomer Pyle? Surprise, surprise, surprise. I don't know. It's been coming for a while. Obviously, we put a crystal ball in last week, but it's been trending for a while, well before the spring game. They've had some really good visits. Like I said, the coaching staff, Darren Usher, director of player personnel, give him props too. And of course, Shane Beamer, who heads it all up as the head coach. You got to have a head coach that cares about recruiting and that can recruit these days. And he certainly does. His track record speaks for itself in that department. So, when we talk about what I talk about on coffee and the show all the time, when it comes to recruiting, geography's big, and that I've always felt, I haven't talked about it the last few years because it just hasn't happened. And South Carolina's done a good job going beyond North Carolina to Maryland and D.C. and somewhat in the state of Virginia to kind of backfill. I don't want to say backfill because they're getting really good prospects and really good talent, but they're getting players, because there's not enough in the state every single cycle. So you have to go elsewhere and, working north. I think it's always been the right move because South Carolina is the closest SEC program to a lot of those destinations, and they have a slew of students that head down 95, pass south of the border, get to Florence, take that, short trip up 20 and head to Columbia for college. And with a big student population, you should be able to recruit football players from that area. And it's paid off. And Shane Beamer's name means a lot up there, too, because of his dad. And also, he recruited, obviously, the state of Virginia, especially Richmond, for Virginia Tech. He recruited the 757, the coastal area of Virginia when he was at Georgia. And he recruited D.C. in that area when he was at Oklahoma and signed Caleb Williams, who's now the quarterback for the Bears. So that's as the head coach at South Carolina now, that's kind of his backyard in terms of recruiting. He knows Shane's always been a very thorough recruiter that knows everybody, like the back of his hand, and he knows everybody up there too. And so that's good. And then if North Carolina starts to come around, the Gamecocks have a pretty good little deal. The I-85 plan, if you will, cuts right through the upstate, doesn't it? But no, 85-95 plan with Virginia, and the Carolinas, and D.C. and Maryland, and all that. And of course, they still recruit Georgia and Florida and all those states as well. But I've always said if some school, probably South Carolina, because it would take a lot, I think, for the North Carolina schools to really come in and clobber Clemson and South Carolina on South Carolina talent. But, South Carolina, even Clemson, and when Clemson's been up, they've done well in North Carolina. They've done better than the Gamecocks through the years. But one of those two schools, if some school could corral all the talent in both Carolinas, like became the school, the most popular school. You're not going to get everybody, but if you became the most popular school in both Carolinas, that's going on 30 million people, 27 million people population. And if you combine the draft metrics and the blue chip metrics from both states, it's on par with Florida, Texas, California. It's an absolute gold mine for talent, but nobody's ever done it. And I'm not saying the Gamecocks are going to do it. I'm not predicting that because the Harris brothers committed, but I'm saying getting your share out of North Carolina, you got to start somewhere. And the more you get, as we've seen in D.C., as we've seen in Maryland, as we've seen in Virginia, the more you get, the more you can go back to the well because you establish inroads in those areas. And it makes sense. We've talked before about Kentucky. How did Mark Stoops get Kentucky going? Well, when Joker Phillips was there and Rich Brooks was there, Kentucky's primary deal was they'd go and try to get the guys in Kentucky, right? And then they'd hit junior colleges. And then they'd come down and take tier 3 and 4 guys out of the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida and put together a roster. Sometimes they go Ohio or whatever. Well, when Stoops got there, what they started doing was just working the hell out of Ohio, and they started getting the guys that Michigan State used to get under D'Antonio that would go to Wisconsin, that would go to University of Michigan, good players. I mean, all the Big Ten recruits Ohio. There's great football there. And that kind of helped them ascend. Now, I don't want you to get it twisted. I'm not saying South Carolina should aspire to be Stoops at Stoops, Kentucky. That was a program largely with a 9-10 win ceiling at their absolute best. And Ohio is great for linemen and some other positions, but there's not the speed and skill talent you have when you're going Carolinas, Virginia, D.C., Maryland, all that. It's a better place collectively to recruit than the state of Ohio, which is a top 5 state. The point in saying that is to elevate that program and take it from a program that most, in good years, it was a 6-7 win. In bad years, it was winless in the SEC. Took a consistent bowl team and a team that at times won 10 games in the Citrus Bowl, which is great for Kentucky. He's the winningest coach ever. he kind of changed the recruiting plan and started selling proximity. It's kind of an art of war thing, go where your opponent is not. And look, SEC schools recruit Virginia, D.C., Maryland, North Carolina. They do. You're going to run into them on the trail. But when you're kind of the home team in the SEC and the closest program to all those schools, that's a selling point. Parents still like that. I mean, even with all the house settlement, which is settled, which, we'll talk about next week, talked it to death. Got some notes on thebigspur.com if you want to go read those. Even with the money and transfer portal and all that, there's still high school kids making decisions, and their parents like the proximity, and they like what Beamer's selling. So that's smart. It's very, very smart. And, I think here's something else because, and I'll leave you with this. Previous staff sometimes, and look, I always kind of just thought this is the way you do it. And I don't know that the Muschamp staff did it this way. They'd kind of just stuck to the area and were really good in Georgia and tried to win in-state battles. And they were absolutely behind the eight ball in a lot of ways. But under Spurrier and Holtz, they go hit an area and you get some bust from up there or wherever, or you would go and spend time recruiting a guy and not get him, and then they just stop recruiting that area. And that was kind of how Spurrier was. He's like, well, we're just gonna, there's plenty of players here, don't go chasing ghosts, was what he said. And I'm not coming down on his recruiting at all. Obviously, it worked, right, big time. But South Carolina, wouldn't go into a place. If they went into a place and did really well, sometimes, with the exception of like G.A. Mangus working New Jersey and all that, sometimes they wouldn't come back, and that is the work in the north-south thing. So, Mangus actually was further north in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, where he used to coach, and he did do a good job up there. But, you kind of look at it and, Beamer and staff, it's not like they've not been recruiting North Carolina. They have. But they've kept knocking at the door. And eventually, if you keep knocking at the door and you win and you have good people and a good story to tell, guess what's going to, the relationships are lengthy. Guess what's going to happen? You start getting players. And then once you get players, you get more players and more players and more players. And then at some point, you get to the point where you become selective. Not that they're not selective now, but you have so many that want to come from an area. You're like, well, wait a minute, we can't take everybody. You got to take the South Carolina kids too. But that's how you optimize things. And, I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit there. These are just, it's two big commits, a double commit, if you will. But certainly good news for the Gamecocks here on a Saturday night when you're talking about the position need with Aiden Harris and the talent and upside of both of those guys and the geography. And look, this is Charlotte too. So Charlotte has been extra difficult at times, the last few years. And Charlotte's a growing place, and there's always about 10 guys there that are high D1, power 4 level guys. So that's yet another place to go recruit. So if you get DC, the DMV, you got Richmond, you got 757, you got North Carolina, then you got Charlotte too. Plus the work you do in Georgia, and plus the state is getting better. My friends, that's how you get a roster going in the SEC. And I didn't even talk about the transfer portal there, did I? All right, this is JC Shurburtt. Be sure to join me for coffee on Monday morning, maybe along with another commit. Who knows? Also, the show in the morning show. Like, subscribe, and share right here on Chief Sports South Carolina. If you're listening on podcast format, which this will be up on podcast format, please rate us 5 stars. Don't leave any nasty messages, though, on Apple. Certainly appreciate you fine folks for tuning in to this special report. The Harris brothers have committed to South Carolina. Holla at you soon.